Hi and welcome, I'm Andy Mircha and you are watching A News. Here are the headlines. Russia carries out largest yet overnight drone attack on Ukraine, says it's retaliation for recent attacks on civilian areas. The US delays EU tariffs until July 9th after the initial 50% tariff threat. International Conference on Tackling Islamophobia opens in Baku. Thank you for tuning in. Russia carried out its largest yet overnight drone attack on Ukraine, according to Kyiv. Following the third consecutive night of mass aerial attacks, US President Donald Trump called out the Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying he had gone, quote, absolutely crazy. Ukraine's leader, Volodymyr Zelensky, called for more pressure to be put on Moscow.
For the third consecutive night, Russia has launched a record number of drones at Ukraine in what Kyiv says is the largest aerial assault of the war. According to Ukraine's Air Force, at least 364 drones and missiles were fired overnight into Monday. On the previous night, at least 12 people were killed, including 3 children in the northern Zhytomyr region. The Kremlin said the strikes were retaliation for recent Ukrainian attacks on Russian civilian areas. President Putin is doing what must be done to ensure the security of Russia, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov stated on Monday. In a parallel development, Russia claimed it intercepted 96 Ukrainian drones across 12 regions, including 6 over Moscow. Ukraine launched drones with airports closed. The wave of violence has triggered international reactions. US President Donald Trump sharply criticized Putin.
I've always had a very good relationship with Vladimir Putin of Russia, but something has happened to him. He has gone absolutely crazy. He is needlessly killing a lot of people, and I'm not just talking about soldiers. Missiles and drones are being shot into cities in Ukraine for no reason whatsoever.
Trump also hinted at new sanctions against Moscow while offering a sharp rebuke to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Despite the criticism, the Kremlin thanked Trump for his role in facilitating new Ukraine peace talks. Peskov described the current climate as one of emotional overload affecting all sides. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron, speaking during a visit to Vietnam, said Trump realizes Putin lied to him and hoped his frustration would translate into action. German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul emphasized that Europe remains united in its support for Ukraine, calling it both an encouragement to Kyiv and a warning to Moscow.
Ukraine has shown that it is ready to negotiate. It is ready for a ceasefire. Ukraine is ready for peace negotiations. Vladimir Putin is once again responding to this with an unprecedented hail of missiles and drones. And that shows that he is not ready for peace at this point in time. But we want peace. And the only way to peace is through negotiations and a willingness to negotiate. As long as this willingness does not exist on the Russian side, Ukraine can rely on us.
Nicht vorhanden ist, wird die Ukraine sich auf uns verlassen können.
As the Russian barrage continued, Poland scrambled its air force alongside NATO allies to protect its airspace, highlighting fears of escalation spilling beyond Ukraine's borders.
Donald Trump rebuked Vladimir Putin, but has also criticized Volodymyr Zelensky following the series of aerial strikes in recent days. The White House threatened Moscow with severe consequences. For more on that, we go to Washington and our Ubay Shabander.
President Donald Trump sharply rebuked Russian leader Vladimir Putin over the weekend, following the Kremlin's largest missile and kamikaze drone attack on Kyiv to date. Trump said that he was considering implementing new sanctions on Russia, though he also criticized Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He has gone absolutely crazy, Trump posted on social media, referring to Putin. The US president said that Putin's attacks on Ukraine were needlessly killing a lot of people. And the US president threatened that if Putin continues to, quote, seek the control of all of Ukraine, then it will lead to the downfall of Russia, as President Trump put it. The Ukrainian Air Force said that Russia had launched hundreds of kamikaze drones and nearly 70 cruise missiles against multiple Ukrainian cities in the span of 2 days. President Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, has met with Putin on 4 occasions since February in Moscow in the hopes of brokering a ceasefire and peace deal. But so far, the Kremlin has not signaled that it is ready to accept an unconditional ceasefire. Meanwhile, Western defense officials believe that Russian armed forces may be preparing for another major offensive into eastern Ukraine. And according to latest Western intelligence estimates, Russia, since the war and invasion began, has lost at least 10,000 ground combat vehicles, including more than 3,000 tanks, as well as losing to approximately 250 warplanes since the war began. And President Trump's recent statements indicate a new level of frustration with Vladimir Putin, as Ukraine's Western allies have said that they have lifted restrictions on the use of military supplies to Ukraine, and that long-range strikes with Western-provided munitions deep into Russian territory will now be authorized. Ube Shabander, Washington, D.C., A News.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has confirmed that Western countries allied to Ukraine are no longer imposing range limits on arms delivered to Kyiv. Speaking at a digital conference in Berlin, Merz said there are no longer any restrictions on the range of weapons provided to Ukraine by Berlin, Paris, London, and Washington. He added that this means that Ukraine can defend itself by striking military positions in Russia. Joining us from New York to talk on the latest surrounding the Russia-Ukraine war is Victor Rudd of the Ukrainian American Bar Association. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with some of the most recent developments. We've heard Germany's Merz saying that Kyiv no longer has any range limits on arms delivered by its Western allies. Do you believe this could prove to make a difference on the battlefield?
Yes, it certainly would. It would make a difference. Let's see if it happens. But the real difference will be made only if the West, including the United States, understands what the war is all about. It's not a territorial dispute. It's not a border dispute. And if they straighten out their spine and have a purpose and a goal, the purpose and the goal has to be to enforce 70, 80 years of international agreements that Russia also agreed to in terms of the sovereignty of nations and the sanctity of territory. If we don't have that change in our mindset here in the West, then this will continue to be a bit of a circus, unfortunately, a tragic one that has been going on actually now, not just since February of 22, but since 2014.
Is that...
We cannot have the...
Is that change maybe on the horizon? We've heard Trump calling Putin absolutely crazy. Then Francis Macron said he hopes Trump's anger towards Moscow would translate into action. Do you think that might be the case going forward?
Well, let's see if that happens. That would be a 180-degree reversal. Right now, we've simply had the United States and Trump being an advocate for Russia instead of being a mediator, rewarding Russia instead of imposing sanctions. And after this long and bloody history, my interpretation of Trump's reaction is essentially consistent with how he addressed other issues where he has failed, including on domestic policy, and that is to always blame somebody else. He pretends he's surprised. Well, what is the reason for his surprise? I cannot believe that he did not have the same information that I have as a civilian about what has been happening in Ukraine and what Russia has been doing. And he acts as if this is something new. I view this at this point, until action supports words, I view this as an attempt to deflect attention away from his own personal failure and blame it on some big change that Putin has undergone. Putin has undergone through no changes whatsoever.
Victor, thank you so much for joining us and offering your insights. In other news, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said that his country would be able to survive if the nuclear talks with Washington fail. This comes a day after the U.S. President Donald Trump described weekend talks with Tehran as very good and hinted that an announcement could come soon. According to the Omani mediator, the latest talks in Rome brought some progress.
As global attention stays on nuclear non-proliferation and Middle East stability, Iran-US negotiations over Tehran's nuclear program continue, though the next round of talks remain uncertain. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi confirmed that no agreement has yet been reached on the date or venue for the next round of negotiations. He added that Tehran is proceeding patiently and calmly and reiterated Iran's commitment to its right to enrich uranium for peaceful purposes. The fifth round of talks in Rome last Friday, mediated by Omani Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi, saw some but inconclusive progress amid ongoing disputes over Iran's uranium enrichment. However, speaking to reporters in New Jersey, US President Donald Trump expressed optimism about the recent diplomatic efforts with Tehran.
Having to do with nuclear, we've had some very, very good talks with Iran, and I don't know if I'll be telling you anything good or bad over the next 2 days, but I have a feeling I might be telling you something good. We've had some real progress, serious progress.
While both sides maintain firm public positions, recent developments suggest that there is still room for negotiation in the effort to resolve the long-standing nuclear dispute.
Now, for more on the Iranian position on the nuclear talks with the US, we go to Tehran and Turaj Shiralilu.
Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian is scheduled to visit Muscat, Oman on Tuesday and Wednesday to boost the friendly relations, while Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Tehran is reviewing the proposal by Oman about the ongoing Iran-US nuclear talks. President Pezeshkian told the visiting Omani Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi in Tehran last week that his visit will be a turning point to deepen the close bilateral relations. Also, reports confirmed by Foreign Minister Araghchi said al-Busaidi has provided Iran and the US with a proposal during their recent nuclear discussions. On the verge of the Iranian president's visit to Muscat, Iranian and US negotiators met last Friday in Rome to hold their fifth round of indirect talks mediated by the Omani Foreign Ministry. Foreign Minister Araghchi confirmed that Oman provided the Iranian and US delegations with a proposal which he said is under study. The Omani proposal is reportedly suggesting a 6-month moratorium of Iran's uranium enrichment in return for lifting certain sanctions unilaterally imposed by the US on Iran. Although Iran has categorically rejected the US demand of zero enrichment as its red line, US President Donald Trump has said there was real progress in latest talks with Iran. The visit by Iranian President to Oman follows Trump's tour of the US allies Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar 2 weeks ago. While Iran and the neighboring Persian Gulf Arab states are currently experiencing a thaw in their ties, Tehran and Muscat have enjoyed traditionally friendly political and trade relations. These close relations date back to the early 1970s, when the pro-West Shah of Iran militarily helped Oman during a civil war. Moreover, Oman has adopted an independent approach in its ties with Tehran compared to other regional Arab countries, which generally adjust with Saudi Arabia their Iran's relations. Turaj Shiralilu, reporting for A News TV, Tehran.
Washington and Brussels are stepping back from a potential trade clash as Donald Trump announced he will delay the implementation of a 50% tariff on EU goods after holding a call with European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen.
US President Donald Trump said on Sunday he has no intention of bringing textile manufacturing back to America, emphasizing instead his focus on high-tech and defense industries. Trump told reporters he's not looking to make T-shirts and socks before departing New Jersey. He underscored his preference for prioritizing sectors like semiconductors and military hardware. US leader also confirmed he had agreed to extend a deadline for trade negotiations with the European Union to July 9th, following a phone call with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen.
She just called me, as you know, and she asked for an extension on the June 1st date. And she said she wants to get down to serious negotiation because I've told you specifically, but I told anybody that would listen, they have to do that. And we had a very nice call, and I agreed to move it. I believe June 9th would be, July 9th would be the date. That was the date she requested. Could we move it from June 1st to July 9th? And I agreed to do that. And that she said we will rapidly get together and see if we can work something out.
The European Commission said the call initiated by von der Leyen gave fresh momentum to the stalled transatlantic trade talks. Following the conversation, Trump stepped back from a plan to impose 50% tariffs on EU imports starting June 1st.
First of all, it was a good call. Indeed, as was also noted in the social media post by President von der Leyen and confirmed by President Trump himself when he spoke to the press yesterday. So basically, they agreed both to fast-track the trade negotiations and to stay in close contact. Now, in terms of what were the details of the discussions, we will not enter into that. But what I can say, we are talking about, of course, the world's single largest and closest trading relation. So these negotiations are complex. And so they are taking time.
To build on the renewed dialogue, EU Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič is expected to speak with US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick.
The summit of Southeast Asian countries kicked off in Kuala Lumpur, with the ASEAN leaders signing a document laying out a 20-year vision for regional integration. The summit in Malaysia is set to cover a number of topics, including the protracted conflict in Myanmar and the global trade uncertainty.
The annual ASEAN two-day summit began in Malaysia on Monday, with regional leaders voicing concern over growing global trade uncertainty, largely driven by US tariff threats under President Donald Trump. As market volatility rises and economic growth slows, the 10-member bloc is seeking ways to safeguard regional stability and strengthen economic resilience. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, hosting this year's summit, said he had written to President Trump requesting a meeting between the United States and ASEAN to address escalating trade tensions.
Quiet engagement matters, and this small and the breach may be fragile, but as they say in matters of peace, even a fragile breach is better than a widening gulf. I strongly believe in the fortitude and staying power of ASEAN to withstand the headwinds and weather the storms of the challenges and uncertainties facing us.
The Trump administration's recent threats to impose sweeping tariffs on global partners have sparked alarm among Southeast Asian economies, many of which depend heavily on trade. While Myanmar's internal conflict remains on the agenda, much of the summit's focus has turned to managing the economic fallout of US trade actions and reinforcing regional partnerships in response. ASEAN leaders are also set to meet Chinese Premier Li Qiang and officials from the Middle East on Tuesday, as part of efforts to broaden economic cooperation and navigate the shifting global trade landscape.
Over in France, farmers blocked roads near Paris and rallied at the National Assembly, demanding lawmakers pass a bill that would ease rules on pesticide use and irrigation.
Farmers across France launched a new wave of protests targeting key roads near Paris and rallying outside the National Assembly. They're demanding that a new farming bill, already passed by the Senate, be approved by the lower house without changes. The bill would relax rules on pesticide and water use, which farming unions say are essential for protecting jobs, boosting competitiveness and cutting through red tape.
We are here to defend our bill that we submitted to the National Assembly. a bill that includes various points that were promised during the last demonstrations in January 2024, and all of them have been amended.
So if we ever manage to lift these constraints, it could also allow farmers who are small business owners to start businesses on their farms and be more or less on an equal footing with our European colleagues. For now, we're not talking about what's happening outside Europe. It's really what's happening inside Europe. And so we need this European harmonization, and France needs to realize that we need to stop over-transposing, because, in fact, we are destroying our production system, just as we did with health, just as we did with industry, just as we are doing with agriculture.
But the issue has sparked controversy. One of the most debated points is a push by farming unions to reauthorise a powerful insecticide ban in the EU. It's been linked to widespread bee and pollinator die-offs, making it a target of environmental groups. Proposed amendments in the lower house aim to block the return of this pesticide and tighten water use rules, which would scale back Senate-backed plans to expand irrigation. Left-wing parties, the Greens and France Unbowed, oppose the Senate's version of the bill. They say it weakens environmental protections and could harm biodiversity and public health on the long run.
Spain hosted representatives from European and Arab nations for a meeting of the Madrid group to discuss ways to pressure Israel into ending the war in the Gaza Strip. Madrid has called for an arms embargo against the Israeli government to end the war, according to the Spanish Foreign Minister José Manuel Álvarez. He also suggested targeted sanctions could be imposed on individuals who obstruct the two-state solution. The Madrid meeting comes ahead of a UN conference on the two-state solution set for June 17th in New York. Baku is hosting an international conference on tackling Islamophobia. With participants from over 40 countries, the two-day event is meant to address digital hate, policy discrimination, and the rising anti-Muslim sentiment worldwide.
Azerbaijan is once again taking the lead in global efforts. For the third year in a row, Baku is hosting an international scientific conference, bringing together religious leaders, scholars, and policymakers from nearly 40 countries to combat Islamophobia. The event marks the International Day to Combat Islamophobia and aims to challenge prejudice through dialogue and academic cooperation.
This year's conference brings together over 100 foreign guests, including scholars, policy experts, religious leaders, and representatives from NGOs, nearly from 40 countries. It is supported by major international partners, including the G20 Interfaith Forum, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Doha International Center, ISESCO, and the Council of Muslim Elders, Central Council of Muslim in Germany, and the International Muslim Forum. The two-day conference will address a wide range of pressing issues under the theme sessions such as global trends in Islamophobia, anti-Muslim hatred in politics, Islamophobia in different contexts such as regional perspectives, the role of AI and digital media reinforcing Islamophobic bias, women identity and stereotypes, navigating religious and cultural prejudices.
With the exception of the handful of the countries, most nations of the world are made up of the multi-ethnic and multi-confessional societies. Therefore, the existing of the representatives of the different nationalities, ethnic groups, and religions in an environment of mutual dialogue and understanding is in a paramount importance for civil peace and solidarity in the country. Azerbaijan can serve as a role model for many countries with an experience in this field. As an integral part of the Islamic world, Azerbaijan is a country where representatives of the various faiths, cultures have historically lived in an atmosphere of the brotherhood and friendship. The Islamic faith, as a barrier of the universal values, has played a vital role in shaping and advancing those exemplary relations. To this day, the Azerbaijani people continue to uphold their rich traditions of the tolerance and multiculturalism, contribute actively to intercivilizational dialogue, Islamic solidarity, make meaningful steps to promote Islamic values globally.
From digital media and artificial intelligence to legal frameworks and regional perspectives on anti-Muslim discrimination, panel discussions span a wide range of topics.
Social media.
If we look at the media and also the organizations supporting this awareness and the media in spreading awareness, but unfortunately there are many commercial organizations that work at the profit side apart from supporting this awareness, which is very important. I think that there is a very important role to play, and I think that the lack of matching standards in mixing things, the issue of Islamophobia, should be looked at from both sides, the Western view and the view from the side of Islam.
Islamophobia.
What began 2 years ago has achieved progress towards increasing international awareness about Islamophobia, making another significant milestone in our collective journey. This reflects Azerbaijan's commitment to contributing in combating Islamophobia and promoting interfaith harmony. I wish to express the OIC General Secretary's profound appreciation to the Baku International Multiculturalism Center, the Center of Analysis of International Relations, the Baku Initiative Group, and their partners for their thoughtful organization of this crucial event.
Well, especially the focus on Europe, which is the region where we try to manage a counter-narrative, is that there is a great religious illiteracy. There is ignorance on what is religion, and added to this problem, there is ignorance and a misleading interpretation of Muslims and of Islam. So Islam is targeted through ignorance and prejudice, and Muslims are discriminated in terms of something which is not citizenship, not believers, and not persons that can be part of the society with their skills.
In my case also I am priest to address this issue and to give his voice. And I should say that I gave my intervention without any control or any change. What I said in my intervention, among other things, that I feel it is my duty to speak against Islamophobia out of service to truth, because there is injustice in this, but also out of gratitude to all my Muslim friends around the world for their love, caring, attention, generosity. And we should always and all work for genuine fraternity among all believers, but also every member of the human family, because it is, how to say, a global enterprise. It should be easy to have peace in humanity if we respect and love each other.
We, as Muslims, in every time and place, continue to suffer from this blatant and vile issue, a problem that is one of the gravest afflictions facing the world today. Therefore, we must defend our faith with all strength, wisdom, and with the best manners, in a gentle, sound, and kind way. Though these insults are not new and have existed throughout history, we must continue to counter them with grace and peace. Hatred of Islam is not just hatred of Islam itself, it is a hatred of peace, safety, and global stability. Therefore, all people, not only Muslims, but followers of all religions, must stand together to defend against those who defame Islam. We must all stand for our peace, our lives, and our well-being, to live in safety and harmony, and together reject those who unjustly attack our sound, pure religion.
The first step is to get together and gather all of these scholars and luminaries from different backgrounds. So I applaud and commend Azerbaijan, the government of Azerbaijan, and the organizers for holding such an important conference, which does not just focus on speeches, but building partnerships and building alliances for this global fight against Islamophobia.
The conference also tackles the role of youth, the stereotyping of Muslim women, and the institutionalization of hate speech in politics and law. During a powerful moment in the discussion, the issue of personal freedom and the double standards surrounding women's choices, especially in the context of Islamophobia, was brought to light.
Personally, it's for me, a person who is racist or who has judgment against any other person, he has a problem in his brain. He has to fix it. Because you will not ask me to wear what I want to wear. This is my freedom, this is my skin, this is my body, I can do whatever I want. They are free. If they see a woman with full body tattoo, it's free. But a woman wearing a full hijab, it's not free. So it's hypocritic.
The conference also tackles the role of youth, the stereotyping of Muslim women, and the institutionalization of hate speech in politics and law. Azerbaijan, a country known for its tradition of multiculturalism, has made combating Islamophobia a core part of its foreign policy. Organisers say the goal is not only to raise awareness, but to build lasting networks of cooperation. As discussions continue, participants say the fight against Islamophobia is far from over, but forums like this show what is possible when nations come together with purpose and clarity. The Baku conference continues through tomorrow, with more panels planned on inclusion, media literacy and cultural preservation.
Armenia's Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan said peace with Azerbaijan is near and pledged to amend the constitution if the country's top court blocks the peace agreement. Speaking alongside the Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico at the Yerevan Dialogue 2025 forum, Pashinyan said he's confident that there will be no war, adding that he's committed to continue efforts toward a lasting peace that could transform the region. Fico spoke on the need to finalize the normalization process for regional stability and invited Pashinyan to visit Slovakia. France considers the signing of a peace agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia important, according to the French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot. During his visit to Yerevan, Barrot said that the South Caucasus region is an important communication hub for Europe. Following Barrot's meeting with his Armenian counterpart, 3 documents were signed, including provisions for annual political consultations between the foreign ministries, cooperation in combating disinformation, and training of diplomats. Georgia is celebrating its Independence Day today, marking the founding of its first democratic republic in 1918. Though Soviet rule interrupted this independence in 1921, it was restored in 1991 following a national referendum. The Independence Day was marked with festivities, speeches, and an oath-taking ceremony for military recruits in central Tbilisi. The celebrations then continued in the city center with exhibitions, concerts, and various entertainment events. As Georgia celebrated its Independence Day, political divides in the country lingered behind the festivities. Our Nini Nikolaishvili has the story in Tbilisi.
Today, Georgia marked its Independence Day, a historic occasion that first declared on May 26 in 1918 when country broke away from Russian Empire to firm Democratic Republic of Georgia. Over a century later, the date remains deeply symbolic, especially in this current political climate. Celebrations took place across the country with military display, concerts and cultural events, but behind the festive scenes, this day brought sharp political messages from both the ruling party and the opposition. Today's government has hijacked the word independence, but true independence means democracy, freedom, and our people's right to choose their own path, said opposition MP Levan Bezhashvili. Parliament Speaker Shalva Papashvili warned that any provocation during planned opposition rallies would be responsibility of foreign diplomats and donors, accusing some ambassadors of siding with what he describes as violent extremists. He also stressed that independence means continuous struggle and everyday fight, and urged the public to understand the true value of sovereignty. The Georgian Dream's executive secretary, Mamuk Amdinaradze, echoed that tone, declaring that Georgia has never been as independent as it is today. He criticized visiting European politicians, calling them some radicals and accusing them of attempting to pressure the country. No more subjugation, he wrote. Decisions about Georgia will be made only in Georgia. But despite the political divide, leaders across the spectrum called for unity around nation's values. It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
Russian and Turkish foreign ministers Sergei Lavrov and Hakan Fidan are set to meet in Moscow to discuss ongoing peace negotiations and regional security. Besides the Russia-Ukraine negotiation process, they are expected to speak on the South Caucasus, the Black Sea region, Libya, and Syria. Kazakhstan and China have agreed to enhance the capacity and speed up logistics at their shared border. Delegations from both countries visited border points and announced measures to simplify border crossings. Our Fariza Kalimurzina has more.
Border cooperation between Kazakhstan and China is reaching a new level. In the first 4 months of this year, over 238,000 vehicles passed through checkpoints, a 41% increase compared to the same period in 2024. The delegations visited the Nurzholo and Korgo sites, where they assessed infrastructure and discussed ways to improve it. Following the visit, it was decided to extend round-the-clock operation of the crossings until the end of June next year. Currently, up to 650 vehicles pass through Nurzholo daily, and by September this number is expected to double. One key step is the mutual recognition of X-ray images from inspection complexes. This will speed up cargo screening and reduce waiting times at the border. Another priority is the reconstruction of the border bridge between Nurzholo and Korgos. The two countries also agreed to intensify customs cooperation and hold regular working meetings. These agreements are expected to strengthen the region's transit potential, speed up delivery of goods, and ensure stable trade within international transport corridors. Today, Central Asia is becoming an important market for Chinese cars and a hub for their assembly. Demand for affordable vehicles is growing, and governments are keen to attract investments from Chinese companies. New Chinese cars already account for 39% of the Kazakh market. Fariza Kalimurzina, A News, in Almaty, Kazakhstan.
Iran says it's ready to boost regional trade by offering logistics support to neighbors through its southern port city of Bandar Abbas. Speaking at the launch of the Tehran-Afrin dry port terminal's final phase, Iranian officials said landlocked countries like Russia, Belarus, and several Central Asian and South Caucasus states can now access global markets via Iran's transport network. Azerbaijan and Uzbekistan are taking steps to deepen media cooperation as a joint press tour kicks off in Tashkent. Our Alia Aziz brings the highlights from the first day of the tour.
The Azerbaijan-Uzbekistan Media Press Tour officially began in Tashkent with a visit to the Uzbekistan Agency for Information and Mass Communications. Azerbaijani media delegates were welcomed for discussions on strengthening bilateral ties, enhancing public communication on strategies, and exploring collaborative approaches to digital reforms. The delegation received a comprehensive tour of the agency's headquarters, visiting key facilities including media conference hall, green room, and press rooms, offering insight into the structure of Uzbekistan's state media. They were warmly received by First Deputy Director Dishot Saidjanov, who highlighted the long-standing friendship between Azerbaijan and Uzbekistan and spoke about the country's evolving media landscape. The next stop was the University of Journalism and Mass Communications, where the delegation participated in a seminar on crisis communication, media ethics, and digital trends. Rector Shersohan Kudrahuja emphasized the cultural closeness between the two nations and voiced hopes for deeper cooperation through student exchanges and joint academic initiatives. In the afternoon, the team visited Sevimli TV, a leading private channel known for its youth-oriented content. Media professionals from both sides discussed audience engagement, independent journalism, and cross-border content creation. The tour concluded at Uzbekistan's Ministry of Defense Media Center, where the delegation observed the country's transition to multi-platform broadcasting and explored video editing and technical facilities. This press tour marked a new chapter in Azerbaijan-Uzbekistan media relations, fostering mutual understanding, professional collaboration, and a shared commitment to telling the stories of two brotherly Turkic nations. Reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, this is Aliya Aziz for A News.
Uzbekistan says it aims to grow IT services exports to $1 billion by 2025 and $5 billion by 2030. The goal was announced at the M360 Eurasia Forum, hosted for the first time in Tashkent. The event gathered international experts to discuss internet accessibility, sustainable digital growth, and stronger ties between governments and tech sectors. The United Nations World Food Programme warned that Afghanistan's economy is collapsing and that a third of the population is at risk of hunger. They appealed for a little more than $500 million to support the most vulnerable parts of the society. Our Tamim Bahis has more in Kabul.
A growing hunger and nutrition crisis in Afghanistan is putting millions of lives at risk. The WFP says it urgently needs $555 million to continue its operations over the next 6 months. According to WFP, nearly 15 million people, almost a third of the population, need emergency food assistance just to survive. Right now, the WFP can only reach just over 6 million, leaving more than 8 million people without help, including over 2 million women and children. 8 in 10 Afghan families can't afford a minimally nutritious diet, and 3 in 4 are forced to borrow money just to buy basic groceries. This crisis hits women and children hardest. WFP expects 3.5 million children under 5 to suffer from malnutrition this year, a figure not seen in 4 years. Already, 1.2 million pregnant and breastfeeding women are malnourished and urgently need support. Last year, WFP assisted nearly 10 million women and children, treating 1 million mothers and 1.4 million children for malnutrition. But severe funding cuts are forcing the agency to scale back. Children under 2 now receive support, while older toddlers go without. Pregnant women are getting only half of the food they need. Without urgent action and funding, the World Food Programme warns that a generation of Afghan children could face permanent health consequences or worse. The time to act, they say, is now. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for A News.
Now for some uplifting news. Father of a 3-year-old that beat leukemia in Turkey took to social media and called on his fellow townspeople to celebrate with the family, as he said they don't have many friends. Little did he know, thousands would turn up.
This isn't a concert, it's not a protest, and no, there's no big sale happening. These thousands of people in Istanbul are here to celebrate one small but very brave superhero. Meet Ali Asaf Demir. He was diagnosed with leukemia at just 8 months old. But after a bone marrow transplant and 2 years of tough treatment, he's officially a survivor. Ali's dad Samet didn't have a huge circle of friends to celebrate with. So instead, he asked the internet. The call touched hearts far beyond the family's doorstep. The local municipality in Sancaktepe got involved, and suddenly, it wasn't just a balloon release. It was a full-blown celebration of life. Thousands gathered, balloons were released, the sky was filled with colour, and for the Demir family, hope.
That's all we have for you for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.